Canada, located in North America, is the second largest country on the Earth, covering over 9.98 million square kilometers territorial area. Canada has rich freshwater resources of about 2 million lakes. 890,000 square kilometers of Canada's territory is covered by fresh water, which accounts for 7% of the world's renewable water supply. Canada is one of the richest countries in the world and is a member of the OECD and G7. In 2021, Canada's GDP reached $1.99 trillion, ranking the ninth in the world. Canada's GDP per capita has reached $52,000, which has surpassed the European troika of Germany, Britain, and France. Canada's economy is dominated by the service industry. 3/4 of the country's population are engaged in the service industry, ranking among the top of developed countries. The United States is Canada's largest trading partner. Canada's oil industry has been a major driver of its economic growth, with more than 10% of the world's oil reserves, and Canada's top export products in 2021 are mineral fuels, oils, distillation products accounting for 24% of total exports. Vehicles, machinery, nuclear reactors, boilers accounted for 15.7% of total exports. The agri-food industry is an important part of Canada's economy, and Canada is one of the world's largest food exporters. Canada is also one of the countries with the largest number of new immigrants in the world each year. In 2021, Canada got first place in immigration and investment on the Anhalt Ipsos Nation Brands Index. On April 1, 2022, the Canadian population has grown to over 38,654,000. In Canadian history, the first thing to talk about is the Indigenous people of Canada. The earliest inhabitants of Canada were Indians who crossed the Bering Strait from northeastern Asia to America in ancient times. They lived there 1,400 years ago. The tough Indigenous tribes overcame harsh long winters to survive on this land, created a unique culture of Indigenous people, and became the first nation to settle in Canada. The Indigenous population at the time of the first European settlements is estimated to have been between 200,000 and 2 million. About 500,000 Indigenous people currently live in Canada. Mary Simon was sworn in on July 26, 2021, as Canada's first Indigenous Governor-General. She is the 30th Governor-General since Confederation. Around 1000 AD, the famous Vikings sailed on the Atlantic Ocean. The Norse crossed the sea from Greenland and built a small short-lived encampment on the coast of what is now Newfoundland. The 15th and 16th centuries were the century of explorers and adventures. In order to find gold in the Northwest Passage to East Asia, many navigators set sail for North America, explored the Atlantic coast from south to north, and discovered the new continent of North America. In 1497, Italian John Cabot explored the Atlantic coast of Canada under the commission of Henry VII of England and made landfall in Newfoundland. In 1534, the French explorer Jacques Cartier explored the Gulf of St. Lawrence, landed in Quebec and Montreal, and took possession of the territory New France in the name of King Francis. The area was gradually developed into a fur trade base. In order to compete for the control of the North American fur trade, the Beaver Wars occurred later. In 1583, English explorer Sir Humphrey Gilbert established a settlement in what is now St. John's, Newfoundland, and declared it to be the first British colony in North America. Later, the French explorer Samuel de Champlain established the earliest permanent European settlement in North America in Port Royal, Nova Scotia in 1605, and in Quebec City, Quebec in 1608. Since then, Britain and France started fighting for dominance of Canada. The North American Colonial War broke out in North America from 1689 to 1763. By 1670, the British had occupied and declared sovereignty and trade monopoly over Hudson Bay and its environs, and surrounded the French territory. The St. Lawrence River Basin from the south and the north sides. Later the Hudson's Bay area, Newfoundland and Nova Scotia were all controlled by the United Kingdom. After the 7 Years' War between Britain and France and Spain, the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1763. The British occupied Quebec and Montreal, and the colony of New France was transferred to the United Kingdom. Since then, Canada became a British colony. With the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War from 1775 to 1783, the United States declared independence in the Treaty of Paris signed in 1783 and ceded the area south of the Great Lakes to the United States. New Brunswick was divided from Nova Scotia to become Crown land. In order to appease the Anglo-Canadians in Quebec, the British government promulgated a new constitutional act in 1791 to divide Quebec into two parts, Upper Canada, where English is the mother tongue, and Lower Canada, where the mother tongue is French. They developed into today's Ontario and Quebec. Thus, English and French became the two official languages of Canada. Currently, 18 million Canadians speak English as their first language and 7 million speak French as their first language. The majority of French speakers live in Quebec. In 1793, Scottish immigrant and explorer A. Mackenzie crossed the Rocky Mountains along the Pacific coast, completing his first transcontinental expedition. British immigration to Canada surged in the first half of the 19th century, with 626,628 European immigrants entering Canada between 1825 and 1846. Since then, the colonial economy changed dramatically. After the War of Independence, the United States attempted to end the British King's rule over Canada with a series of intense wars. From 1812 to 1813, the United States attacked the British North American colonies of Canada's province. From October 1813 to March 1814, the United Kingdom defeated Napoleon in Europe and sent more troops to the North American battlefield. In 1815, the two sides ceased fighting and the original borders were restored. After the war, a large number of British and Irish immigrated to Canada. Between 1825 and 1846, 626,628 European immigrants entered Canada. The Constitution Act 1867 was passed on July 1, 1867. In the three British North American colonies of Canada, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia formed the Commonwealth of Canada. British Columbia and Prince Edward Island later joined the Confederation. World War I broke out and Canada declared war on Germany after Great Britain. During the war, nearly 600,000 troops were mobilized across the country, and they were also tasked with supplying a large amount of military supplies. Among the 650,000 Canadians who fought in World War I, approximately 60,000 were killed and 173,000 wounded. After the outbreak of World War II, Canada declared war on Germany on September 9, 1939. The first Canadian troops arrived in Britain in December 1939. The Canadian Army has participated in many important battles. In August 1940, the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Canada reached an agreement at Ogdensburg, announcing the establishment of the Standing Committee on the Joint Defense of Canada and the United States. On June 6, 1944, the 3rd Canadian Division, assisted by the 2nd Canadian Armoured Brigade, successfully landed on Juno Beach as part of the D-Day. After the war, Canada became a strong economy with a strong military force. In 1949, Canada joined the North Atlantic Treaty Organization (NATO). In 1958, the North American Air Defense Agreement was signed with the United States, and the United States capital and commodity exports to Canada were further expanded. Before 1982, the British North American law had always assumed the role of the substantive Constitution of Canada. After several constitutional amendment conferences, the Canadian Constitution was formally established and implemented in 1982. Canada finally had its own Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In 1999, Nunavut gained independence from the Northwest Territories and became Canada's third territory under the struggle between the Inuit and the federal government. Canada became a federation of 10 provinces and 3 territories. The entire country can be divided into 4 main regions: Western Canada, Central Canada, Atlantic provinces, and Northern Canada. Canada is a constitutional monarchy and a parliamentary democracy, founded on the rule of law and respect for rights and freedoms. The government acts in the name of the Crown, but derives its authority from the Canadian people. Canada is a federation with the central government and 10 provinces sharing powers. The 10 Canadian provinces include British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland and Labrador. The distribution of powers at the federal and provincial levels is enshrined in the Constitution. The powers of the 3 Northern Territories are conferred by the Commonwealth and are not written in the British North America Act. Queen Elizabeth II is Canada's head of state. The Queen's representative, the Governor-General, is usually nominated by the Prime Minister. The office of the Prime Minister Canada is the most powerful institution in the government. July 1st is Canada's National Day. The British Parliament passed the British North America Act on July 1st, 1867, based on the proposal of the Canadian provincial representatives, and a new country called the Dominion of Canada was born at the same time. Since 1879, July 1st has been a statutory holiday in Canada. On October 27, 1982, July 1st was officially renamed Canada Day under the Canada Act. Thanks for watching. Please stay tuned. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it thumbs up.